You might think you're playing a simple game with someone, a little dance of attention and distance, of texting and waiting, of noticing who reaches out first and who doesn't. At first, it seems easy to fall into their rhythm. They disappear, you wait. They show up. You bend slightly, adjusting to their pace, hoping for more than a glance in your direction, more than a flicker of warmth that feels so fleeting. They look calm, collected, untouchable, like they're always 3 steps ahead, and maybe, for a while, it feels like they are. That smirk you think you see is almost like a challenge, a quiet confidence that they are the ones holding all the cards. But here's the thing, the game isn't really theirs to win. And the moment you understand that, the moment you step back from the chase and watch with clarity, that's when the first hint of control shifts. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but it's there. You start to see how their actions, their words, even their silences, are not random. They're predictable if you know what to look for, and you can start playing along on your own terms. Suddenly, what once felt like a carefully orchestrated maze, designed to keep you guessing, becomes a map, and you are not lost anymore. People with this kind of distance, this emotional armor, have a pattern. They're not cruel, not intentionally, but they have a way of creating space between themselves and anyone who matters. They keep just enough distance to feel safe, just enough to test your patience, your persistence, your willingness to accommodate without asking for much in return. It's not always conscious, but it's habitual, a coping mechanism born from the same fear we all carry, the fear of being seen too fully, of being vulnerable and exposed, of needing someone in a way that feels scary. They crave closeness but panic when it arrives, and the result is a constant tension, a push and pull that can feel exhausting if you let it. But here's the insight that changes everything. When you realize they are not untouchable, when you recognize that their game relies on your reactions, your chasing, your longing to connect, you suddenly have a choice. You don't have to run to them, you don't have to fix it, and you certainly don't have to compromise your own emotional rhythm. The first clue that you're dealing with someone who relies on distance is subtle. It's not the big dramatic exits or harsh words. It's in the small things. They respond when they want to, not when you hope they will. Their attention flickers like a candle in the wind. Sometimes they seem intensely present, and other times completely elsewhere. You notice patterns, how long it takes them to reply, the tone they use, the way they vanish, just as you start to lean in. At first it can feel personal, like they're punishing you or deliberately keeping you off balance. But if you pay attention, really pay attention, it's not about you at all. It's about how they manage themselves in relationships, about their need to feel independent and safe, and about the subtle fear they carry that closeness might overwhelm them. Once you see that, it becomes less about their control and more about understanding the map of the game. That's where your power begins, not in chasing them, not in proving yourself, but in observing with clarity and acting with intentionality. You might start noticing why they think they're untouchable. It's in the confidence they project, in the way they appear unbothered when you feel like the world is spinning, in the quiet assumption that they are in charge because you seem invested while they remain distant. They operate on a strategy without even realizing it. By giving little, they maintain the illusion of power. By disappearing, they keep you guessing. By staying calm while your heart races, they make it seem as though they are the masters of the emotional arena. But what they don't see is how much their game is dependent on your response. They thrive on reactions, on the emotional energy they can extract from your desire for connection. And the moment you stop giving them that energy, the moment you hold your calm, the moment you detach without detachment, actually feeling bitter or angry, is when the first crack appears. That smirk fades slightly, the confident stride wavers, and suddenly the air feels different. You are no longer a participant playing by their rules. You are a player rewriting the rules in your own way. The first small win doesn't come with fireworks. It's quiet, almost invisible, but it feels enormous inside. Maybe it's not replying immediately when you normally would. Maybe it's not leaning into a call or text when you feel the pull. Maybe it's maintaining your own schedule and priorities while they expect you to pause for them. It's a subtle assertion of emotional independence, a tiny but powerful reclaiming of your own space. And the effect is instantaneous. They notice. Not always consciously, but they do. Their energy shifts because your energy has shifted. You are no longer chasing the invisible finish line. They are chasing a new dynamic, one where your calm, your boundaries, your self-respect are suddenly the unknowns they can't quite predict. And here's the satisfying part. You don't have to be cruel or manipulative to create this shift. You just have to exist in a way that is fully aligned with your own emotional rhythm in a way that is completely your own. That's when the tables turn, almost imperceptibly at first, and yet for the first time, you realize you are playing the game on your own terms, and you're winning. Once you feel that first shift, there's an almost electric energy that follows. You start to notice how unpredictability becomes your greatest ally. You stop following the script they assume you're following, the script where your attention, your feelings, your every move are predictable. Instead, you act in ways that feel natural to you, but entirely unexpected to them. You might decide to spend your evening with friends instead of waiting for a text. You might post a subtle story without thinking about whether they'll notice. You might respond in a completely neutral tone when normally you would over-explain. And when you do this, the subtle cracks in their armor begin to appear. They can't anticipate your behavior anymore because it's not about them, it's about you, and that shift is disarming in the most satisfying way. Their calm, collected exterior can falter for a fraction of a second, but that fraction is enough. You start to realize that you don't need to bend, you don't need to chase, and you certainly don't need to compromise who you are to gain their attention. That freedom feels intoxicating, even if it's just a quiet, internal victory that no one else sees. Silence becomes your unexpected weapon, a tool you wield without cruelty or manipulation, just a quiet assertion of self. You stop filling every gap with words, texts, or calls. You let the space exist, unfilled, because you know they are uncomfortable with it. And here's the ironic beauty. By not chasing, by not trying to control or manage the relationship, you gain more influence than you ever had before. They start noticing the silence, the calmness, the lack of urgency, and it unsettles them. Not because you're punishing them, but because your self-possession is so different from what they expected. It's like holding up a mirror they weren't ready to look into. And inside you, there's a subtle rush, a sense that you are no longer reacting, you are leading, guiding the emotional rhythm, simply by being present in your own way, fully aligned with yourself, unbothered by their games. That feeling alone is almost addictive, because for the first time in a long time, you are not at the mercy of someone else's emotional flow. As you maintain this energy, you begin to see their vulnerabilities more clearly. The confident, untouchable front they once wore so easily begins to show cracks, almost imperceptibly at first. Maybe it's a hesitation in a text, a pause before responding, a tone that's slightly off from their usual calm demeanor. You start to recognize patterns, the things that make them uncomfortable, the tiny desires they hide beneath layers of self-protection, the subtle ways they seek validation, even while pretending it doesn't matter. And here's the key. You don't exploit this in a manipulative way. You simply observe, you understand, and you adjust. Your awareness itself is powerful. It's as if you suddenly know the rules of the game better than they do. Not because you're trying to win in a traditional sense, but because you are no longer playing by their rules. You're playing by yours, and in doing so, you naturally flip the dynamic. The first big game-changing move is not dramatic, it's subtle, almost invisible, but its impact is massive. You decide to act with intention, to respond in a way that maintains your calm, yet signals that the old patterns no longer apply. Maybe you engage in a conversation only when it aligns with your rhythm. Maybe you set boundaries that are firm, but not confrontational. Maybe you gently tease them in a way that makes them realize they can't fully predict you. The thrill of this moment is almost cinematic, because you can sense the shift before they even consciously notice it. That subtle imbalance, the sense that you are no longer chasing, that you are no longer the one bending to their pace, is exhilarating. It's proof that control is not about aggression, it's about alignment with self, and that's a lesson most people with distance never learn until it's too late. And then comes the moment you've been waiting for, the quiet triumph that makes the first 5 sections of this game feel like practice. They notice you are no longer in their orbit in the same way. They expect pursuit, attention, the emotional chase that fuels their sense of control, but it doesn't come. Instead, there's calm, consistency, and an unshakable sense of self. Their reactions are subtle, a shift in tone, a flicker of curiosity, a hint of intrigue, and for the first time they realize that they are the ones adjusting to you. That moment is electrifying because it's not loud or dramatic, but it carries the full weight of victory. You didn't manipulate, you didn't overthink, you didn't plead, you simply existed fully, acted intentionally, and let the natural consequence unfold. That sense of quiet power, of knowing that the emotional landscape has changed in your favor, is deeply satisfying, and it's a taste of what comes when the rest of the game unfolds. There comes a moment when you start noticing the subtle ways they react, not just to your words, but to your presence, or even your absence. The avoidant thought they had the rhythm of the interaction completely mapped out, that their calm detachment kept them untouchable, but suddenly their pace is uneven. Their curiosity peaks because they can no longer predict your behavior. That flicker of intrigue in their eyes, the pause in their voice, the slight hesitation before a reply, it's a sign. It's the moment where you realize you're no longer the one trying to read them. Now they're reading you, trying to understand what changed. And it's beautiful, because you didn't force it, you didn't argue, you didn't manipulate, you didn't overcompensate. You simply became the unpredictable force of your own authenticity, and that alone makes the old power dynamic collapse, quietly but completely. You've managed to turn the game on its head, and it's exhilarating to see someone who once seemed untouchable, suddenly uncertain. Humor becomes another secret weapon. It's subtle, gentle, and never cruel, but it has a way of unraveling the armor they built over the years. A light tease, a playful comment, or even a witty observation can do more than 1,000 serious conversations ever could. It confuses them because it's not what they expect, it's not reactive, it's not desperate, and it's not clingy. It's you, fully present, fully engaged, and unapologetically yourself. They start to notice that your energy is different from the usual dynamic, that you are no longer trying to earn their attention or approval. And that makes them pause, sometimes even stumble over their own words or actions, because they realize that control isn't theirs anymore. The laughter, the ease, the lightness, it's like you're holding a mirror up to the tension they've relied on for so long, showing them a different reality where chasing is pointless and calm, self-possession reigns. Pressure is the enemy of someone who thrives on distance. And here's the key, you don't have to apply pressure. You don't have to corner them. You don't have to push them to reveal anything. You simply exist in a way that feels confident and unbothered, and the pressure comes from their side. They start testing you subtly, trying to gauge whether you'll react, whether you'll bend, whether you'll chase. But the moment you remain consistent, patient, and emotionally steady, the entire balance shifts. They may withdraw, they may hesitate, they may even try small tactics to pull you back in, but those moves only reveal their dependency on your reaction. And because you don't react the way they expect, you gain quiet, but undeniable control. The game becomes almost cinematic. They are moving, but you are the one directing the tempo, without saying a word. And then you start noticing the subtle shift in power dynamics more clearly, where once they seemed to set the pace entirely, now they are adapting to yours. You may notice it in small ways. The timing of a response, the energy in a conversation, the way they seek to catch your attention without overtly asking. It's a psychological dance, a rhythm that they aren't used to following. And the satisfaction is deep, because it's not about manipulation, it's about self-mastery. You're leading by example, holding your boundaries, maintaining your composure, and letting the natural consequence of your behavior do the work. Suddenly, the emotional landscape looks different. You are not reacting to their actions. You are moving according to your own intentions, and every subtle adjustment they make reinforces the truth that you are in control, not through force but through presence. At this point, the avoidance reactions become more noticeable, almost hypnotic if you pay attention. There's the sudden pause before a text, the careful choice of words, the fluctuation in tone, and even the fleeting glance that lingers longer than expected. They are testing, probing, wondering where they stand, and sometimes you catch the tiniest glimpse of vulnerability that was never meant to be seen. And here's the most thrilling part. You feel a quiet sense of victory without having done anything overt. You didn't chase, you didn't pressure, you didn't react with panic or desperation. You simply allowed your calm, your awareness, and your emotional independence to speak louder than words ever could. That realization that you've shifted the game without cruelty, without conflict, without drama is intoxicating. You see them adjusting to you, not the other way around, and that is the unmistakable feeling of quietly beating someone at their own game. Now comes the part where the full effect of your presence begins to settle in. They may try to withdraw, to retreat into the familiar armor they've always relied on, but it doesn't carry the same weight anymore. You're no longer chasing, no longer bending, no longer feeding the familiar push and pull. That pull that once controlled the rhythm of interaction has shifted entirely, and it's almost palpable. They might test you in small ways, delays in messages, vague responses, casual distractions, but every time they do, your calm response reinforces the new reality. You are not theirs to manipulate or unsettle. Your emotional independence has become the unspoken rule of the game, and suddenly they are operating within your boundaries. That subtle shift is almost imperceptible to outsiders, but to you it is exhilarating, like quietly flipping the board in a game they thought they owned. What's fascinating is seeing how they react when they realize control is no longer theirs. Some may show curiosity, trying to decipher what changed, attempting to reclaim a sense of familiarity. Others may feel a flicker of frustration, the quiet anxiety of someone used to leading, now facing an unshakable calm that they can't influence. And that's when you understand the most important truth. Their game was only ever powerful because you played along. It wasn't about them being untouchable. It was about you reacting, chasing, craving, hoping. Once you step outside that cycle, the dynamics transform, almost effortlessly. You are no longer a participant in their emotional test. You are a person with your own rhythm, and the game can no longer proceed on the terms they imagined. The satisfaction isn't loud, it's quiet, internal, and undeniably profound. At this stage, you can maintain the advantage without ever being cruel. You don't have to manipulate, you don't have to punish. You simply hold your integrity, your awareness, and your boundaries. By existing in your own emotional space, fully present yet detached from the need to control or win, you create a natural authority that is far stronger than aggression or drama could ever be. They may notice, they may adjust, they may even test you again, but the power now rests in the calm, confident energy you've cultivated, and the beauty of it is that it feels authentic. You're not acting strategically in a manipulative way. You are acting strategically by being fully yourself, and that makes the subtle victories feel not only deserved, but inevitable. This process teaches a deeper lesson about emotional mastery in relationships. It shows you that chasing, pleading, or over-investing in someone else's rhythm gives away your power. It demonstrates that boundaries and self-possession are not just defensive, they are transformative. The quiet victories, the moments where they hesitate and you stand steady, reveal more than just control. They reveal your resilience, your clarity, and your ability to stay grounded even in the face of someone who thrives on distance. By maintaining this energy, you essentially redefine the game without ever having to fight, without confrontation, without drama, and the most satisfying realization of all, that you can play the game, win it, and still remain kind, composed, and true to yourself. Finally, there is a sense of release, a kind of laughter that bubbles up because the tension has flipped so completely. You realize you've outplayed a system that seemed insurmountable, not through force or manipulation, but through presence, awareness, and emotional intelligence. That quiet satisfaction, that internal haha, I see you now, resonates deeply because it confirms what you've always known. True power in relationships comes not from chasing, not from control, but from knowing yourself and holding your own emotional ground. You've won, not by defeating them, but by rising above the patterns that once dictated your interactions. And in that victory, there's freedom. A freedom to exist fully, to engage without compromise, to laugh, to breathe, and to carry the confidence that comes from understanding the game and mastering it without ever losing your integrity. That feeling lingers long after the interaction ends, a quiet, profound triumph that is yours alone, and it's far sweeter than any overt display of control could ever be.